This is Linda Favela. Ecclesiastes 11 is 10 beautifully written verses about living life, about the general approach to it that Solomon recommends. There's a flow to it as if it were written in one sitting, with one idea leading to another. Therefore, we'll read it through before we make any comments. Verse 1. Cast your bread on the waters, for you shall find it after many days. Give a portion to 7, yes, even to 8, for you don't know what evil will be on the earth. If the clouds are full of rain, they empty themselves on the earth. And if a tree falls toward the south or toward the north, in the place where the tree falls, there shall it be. He who observes the wind won't sow, and he who regards the clouds won't reap. As you don't know what's the way of the wind, nor how the bones grow in the womb of her who's with child, even so you don't know the work of God who does all. In the morning sow your seed, and in the evening don't withhold your hand, for you don't know which will prosper, whether this or that, or whether they both will be equally good. Truly the light is sweet, and a pleasant thing it is for the eyes to see the sun. Yes, if a man lives many years, let him rejoice in them all. But let him remember the days of darkness, for they shall be many. All that comes is vanity. Rejoice, young man, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth, and walk in the ways of your heart and in the sight of your eyes. But know that for all these things God will bring you into judgment. Therefore remove sorrow from your heart, and put away evil from your flesh, for youth and the dawn of life are vanity. Comment, that's the end of the chapter. Now let's go back through it beginning to end, trying to keep it flowing the way Solomon made it flow. In verse 1, cast your bread on the waters, for you shall find it after many days, end quote. That's to say, go out there and get yourself involved in multiple things, invest in multiple things, spread your charity around, put yourself out there. All of it will wind up being profitable in some way. There's no such thing as wasted activity. You don't know what activities you'll like until you try them. You don't know whom you might be friends with until you meet them. You don't know what'll be profitable until you put a little effort into it. So just put yourself out there and see what happens. Guaranteed you'll be rewarded along the way, at least by some of it. It's better than doing nothing. If you do nothing, you can expect nothing. Then in verse 2, give a portion to 7, yes, even to 8, for you don't know what evil will be on the earth. Christian personal financial gurus have interpreted that to mean a person should diversify his portfolio into 7 or 8 financial categories. And that may be valid, but coming right after verse 1 as it does, the idea extends to more than just investing. It's a general principle of life to have your hand in multiple things. If a person gets all wrapped up in 1 or 2 things, he makes himself too narrow and misses out on the broad scope. It's an echo of verse 1. In verse 3, it's more the same idea that if a cloud's full of rain, it empties itself on the earth, and whatever direction a tree falls, there it shall be. According to that, if a person's full of ideas and desires, go ahead and release them, unleash them on the world. You don't know what the outcome of any of it will be, so just take the attitude that what happens, what happens. At least you emptied yourself. At least you gave it a try. At least you got the experience. At least you found out the answer to that burning question, I wonder what would happen if I did such and such. So don't sweat what the outcome will be. Just do it and find out. Then verses 4 through 6 provide a rationale for that put yourself out there approach to life, which was stated in verses 1 to 3. He who observes the wind won't sow, and he who regards the clouds won't reap. In other words, if you think too long about something, you'll come up with plenty of reasons not to do it. You'll convince yourself something bad's going to happen. So don't overthink it. Try it and find out. Because in verse 5, don't be so pessimistic you might actually succeed. The future is just as mysterious to you as the way a baby grows in the womb, or as mysterious as the works of God who's behind everything. So go ahead, try it. It might fail or it might succeed. You might like it, you might not. Who knows? It's worth a try. And the same in verse 6, sow in the morning and evening, because you don't know what'll happen. Maybe you sow in the morning and the rain washes it away, but then you sow in the evening and it grows. So sow both times. You don't know which will be successful. Then in verse 7, truly the light is sweet, and a pleasant thing it is for the eyes to see the sun. In other words, if something doesn't work out, at least you have this. The sun will keep shining. It'll come up tomorrow. It won't be the end of the world. Life will still be plenty enjoyable. No matter how wrong things go, you still have the enjoyment of seeing the sun come up and seeing the beautiful world. And verse 8, rejoice all your life because the days of darkness are coming. Live life to the fullest because you don't have much time. Soon you'll be 6 feet under and won't see the sun. But we know that's a fallacy given the resurrection. Solomon's entire philosophy unravels given what we know that there is eternal life. His philosophy is based on the idea of eternal death, darkness, unconsciousness, and inactivity. If that actually were the case, all activity on earth would be ultimately empty. There'd be nothing to do except go out there and get various experiences under your belt, and all of which are vain, but at least they might afford some temporary diversion while you're living this vain life. Truth be known, we should live this life knowing that there's more. The reality of eternal life, a coming judgment, coming rewards, and coming punishment compels us to question all of Solomon's philosophies about how we should live this life. Maybe we can keep some of his ideas, but some of them we'll have to throw out. Then verses 9 and 10 finish the chapter with more advice that since life is so short and death is coming, that we should, in effect, squeeze life like an orange to get all we can out of it, but don't be evil in any of your activities, Solomon says, because God will judge you. Since he just got done saying that death consists of darkness, the judgment he's talking about there is judgment in this life, that God will treat a person with favor or disfavor in this life based on his behavior. But that would be inconsistent with what he said in the last chapter, that there's no difference in outcomes for the righteous and wicked. So he's mixed up. In the last chapter, he said God doesn't judge. He's okay with everything. The righteous and the wicked are treated alike. And in this chapter, he says God does judge. Therefore, we have no alternative but to ignore Solomon's conclusions, since his premise concerning death was incorrect. We have to correct his thinking by inserting the knowledge of the resurrection and the life to come. It's a book that forces us to think, not a book that compels us what to think. Going back to what the first verse of the book of Hebrews says, the prophets spoke in many ways. Solomon spoke in confusion in this book, but the confusion speaks to us. Your narrator's mother taught high school. Partly she advised students what classes they should take. There was a particular student my mother knew would be contrary. She knew the student wouldn't take any straight-up advice, so when my mother counseled her, she acted confused about what courses she should take. In no time, the student insisted on exactly what my mother would have told her. So this book teaches about the necessity of a judgment, eternal life, eternal reward, and eternal punishment, because there is no other logical option. But it teaches in a confused way so that the contrarians of us out here will insist that it's all so. Only God's that intelligent that he would make the argument in a way that compels the contrarian to agree with him, which is all to say that's why this book has a tone of confusion to it. Ecclesiastes 12 is next.